Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of the Great Books of Philosophy. In this episode, we're looking at the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Believed to have been written around the 2nd century BCE, the Yoga Sutras distills the essence of yoga. Patanjali describes a complete system of self-realization in 196 sutras. These are concise statements designed to convey yogic practice in a logical and memorable manner. One of the key contributions of Patanjali lies in his classification of yoga into 8 limbs, otherwise known as Raja Yoga. Nowadays, Raja Yoga is mainly referred to as Ashtanga Yoga, which literally translates as the 8 limbs of yoga. These limbs are a sequential guide. They encompass ethical precepts, yama, personal observances, niyama, postures, asana, expansion of the breath, pranayama, sensory withdrawal, pratyahara, concentration, dharana, meditation, dhyana, and ultimately, self-realization and enlightenment, samadhi. In this video, I will explain key insights from the text and break down the 8 limbs of yoga. I really admire this text, and I want to stress the 8 limbs of yoga are still very much observed and followed by yogis around the world. And I can tell you, after reading this text, you will realize that yoga is so much more than just a form of exercise. Let's begin.
Om Bhurbhuvasvaha Om Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo.
So what is yoga? According to Patanjali, Yoga Citta Vritti Nirodha, which means yoga is the cessation or blocking of the activities of the mind. That's it. In a nutshell, Patanjali is telling us that yoga is really about stilling the mind. Obviously, there's a lot more to unpack here. Citta Vritti, the activities of the mind. What are they, and how can we begin to reduce them? Sutra number 6 tells us the activities of the mind are beliefs, both true and false, fantasies, or our imagination, sleep, and our memories. These activities of the mind can be both pleasant and painful. It doesn't matter. In order to reduce them, we must devote ourselves to constant yogic practice, a process known as abhyasa, and we must practice detachment to our sensory experiences. This is a process called viraga. If we do this, Patanjali tells us that we will find samadhi, or enlightenment, and self-realization. Done. Not quite. Let's go deeper and discuss the 8 limbs of yoga.
Om Bhurbhuvasvaha Om Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi.
Yama. Yama is the first limb of Ashtanga Yoga. The word yama literally means rein, as in like a strap that's used to restrain a horse. Nowadays, we usually talk about yama as a precept, of which there are 5. They are ahimsa. Ahimsa means non-harm or non-violence, and this includes our thought, our speech, and our action. It involves refraining from causing harm or injury to oneself or others, both physically and emotionally. This partially explains the emphasis on the vegetarian diet in yogic practice, since the omnivorous diet necessarily entails the suffering and death of other animals. Satya. Satya means truthfulness in one's thoughts, words, and actions. It can be understood simply as don't lie, but it also entails authenticity and good faith with ourselves and others. Asteya. Asteya means non-stealing. Obviously, this includes not stealing people's material possessions or money, but it also includes things like other people's time and their energy or their ideas. So instead, you should accept what you have and be grateful. Brahmacharya. Brahmacharya means the wise and balanced use of one's energy and senses. Most likely you will hear it explained as celibacy or sexual moderation, and this is a big part of it. Yoga places a big emphasis on retention of the prana or life force, and sexual misconduct or masturbation can leave us depleted and lazy. Brahmacharya really means generally channeling and conserving one's vital energy in all aspects of life through self-control and responsible behavior. So, are you a brahmacharya? Aparigraha. Aparigraha means non-possessiveness or non-attachment. Many people will know that this is a big aspect of Buddhism and minimalism. The idea is to cultivate detachment and focus on the present moment rather than focusing on things and becoming attached to them. This is a huge topic, obviously, especially now with materialism and our consumeristic culture.
Om Bhurbhuvasvaha Om Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo.
Number 2, niyama. Niyama is similar to yama, but rather than prohibitions, niyama is our obligations or observances. So it's the positive aspect of the ethical framework of Ashtanga Yoga. There are also 5 observances. First one, socha. Socha means cleanliness or purification of the body, mind, and environment. It encompasses physical cleanliness through hygiene. It also encompasses mental purity through focusing on positive thoughts like gratitude and compassion, and avoiding complaining or discrimination. And it also includes maintaining a clean and tidy living space and environment. Santosha. Santosha means contentment and finding satisfaction in the present moment. This comes back to gratitude and not allowing the mind to wander and crave external sources of happiness and pleasure. Naturally, this means that yogis should maintain inner joy and fulfillment, regardless of their external circumstances. Tapas. Tapas means discipline or strength of will. It involves accepting and enduring adversity and austerity to purify and transform oneself. Tapas can include practices such as rigorous asana practice, meditation, fasting, heat exposure, think Indian summers, and more modern austerities such as no air conditioning, a bland basic diet, and sleeping on a really firm bed or the floor. Svadhyaya. Svadhyaya means self-study, both self-directed study of the yogic literature, but it also means studying yourself and self-reflection. In yogic practice, it is said that the nature of the self and reality can be understood by persistent and skillful inward focus and meditation. So this is really important to the overall practice. A quick side note about yoga philosophy in general. The word used in Sanskrit is darshana, which means to see. So here the emphasis is on insight through personal experience and practice. This is unlike Western philosophy, which we inherited from the Greeks. So the Socratic method and eventually the scientific method. The epistemology here is really different. I think it's really crucial to understand this to evaluate yogic philosophy and a lot of Eastern philosophy in general, actually. I really love to delve into this further, and it's a huge topic, obviously, but I just want you to keep that in mind. The last of the niyama is Ishvara Pradhanhana. This means surrender to a higher power or the divine. Some would say devotion to God. That is a translation that I've heard. But to me, that feels far too similar to the notion of like worship in the Abrahamic religions. And it's not really that. It's more about acknowledging that there's a greater reality beyond the ego and our day-to-day activities. And so through attention and practice, we can become closer with this higher reality. It's basically this simple acknowledgement that there is something more to reality. This simple acknowledgement can immediately cultivate humility and trust in our interconnectedness with the universe. Right, on to the next limb.
Bhargo devasya dhimahi dhiyo yo nah prachodayat.
Asana. This is the aspect of yoga we're all likely most familiar with, and I'm going to assume you already have an image in your mind of a healthy, flexible person bent over in a downward dog or expanding in a warrior pose. But here in the Yoga Sutras, we actually get a far more restrained definition of asana, and I think this is really important. In the context of the Yoga Sutras, the term asana is mentioned only briefly in the second book. Patanjali defines asana as Striya Sukham Asanam, which means a steady, comfortable posture. Patanjali does not really provide specific details about the various physical postures, but generally, Striya Sukham Asanam is associated with the cross-legged position, like I'm sitting in right now. So this could be your ordinary cross-legged position, or Siddhasana, where the left heel is on the perineum and the right heel is up on top of the calf, or Padmasana, otherwise known as the lotus pose. The focus here is on creating a physical foundation that allows the mind to settle and concentrate without distraction. This makes way for the last 4 limbs of Ashtanga Yoga, which are considered the internal practices. Are you getting the point? In the Yoga Sutra and in yoga traditionally, asana is really only a preparation for the body to sit in a comfortable position to allow the practitioner to go deeper into their own consciousness in meditation. Later systems did develop the asanas further as a system of health and fitness, obviously. But what we have in the West within the fitness industry and the fitness culture in general is, I think, hugely obscures the fact and reduces yoga down to an exercise system, which it's not. It's a complete method to enlightenment and self-realization. Most of the hard yarns are actually done internally. Perhaps one reason Patanjali was so brief on asana was because the people of his day were generally far more flexible, and being able to sit cross-legged for long periods of time was probably relatively commonplace. So, in summary, what I want you to remember is that according to the Yoga Sutras, asanas prepare the body to adopt a steady and comfortable position to support the practice of concentration and meditation. And that's it.
Om Tat Savitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo.
4. Pranayama. Pranayama is defined in the Yoga Sutra as Tasmin Sati Svasa Prasavasya Gati Vicheta Pranayama, which approximately means after asana, pranayama is the control of the movement of inhalation and exhalation. Simply put, prana means vital force or life force, and ayama technically means control, but it's usually interpreted as expansion or harnessing. Prana is subtle in that, according to the yogic tradition, it's not a part of the physical structure of the body, in that it can't be explained in terms of matter alone. So it's often associated with the breath and the nerves, but technically prana travels through a network of nadis. These are channels that are not actually observable parts of the physical body. And this can be challenging to reconcile with the modern anatomical understanding of our body. The way that I've chosen to look at it is I go with an interpretation where Prana is kind of a subjective description of the bioenergy within the body, which encompasses obviously electrical signals in the nerves, chemical energy in the cells, and the transformation of chemical energy into kinetic energy. So again, remember, this is yoga darshana, which means to see, so it's a subjective or inward-facing experience.
Bhargo devasya dhimahi dhiyo yo nah prachodayat.
Number 5, pratyahara. Pratyahara is the fifth limb of yoga, which means withdrawal of the senses. This means the conscious effort to withdraw one's attention and awareness away from the external world of objects and direct the attention inwardly at the mind. This initiates the internal practices by first drawing the practitioner's awareness away from the external world of his senses. The external world, as we all know, is full of distractions, both pleasant and unpleasant, but both need to be overcome in order to direct our awareness inward. And this only represents the beginning of the practices, but it is a very necessary first step, withdrawal. Patanjali does not prescribe a particular exercise to follow here, but later texts do, and so these practices could include things like following the breath, the use of body scanning. These practices serve as an aid in the practitioner's attempts to withdraw their mind from the world around them. And from there, on to the next limb.
Om bhurbhuvasvaha Om tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo.
Dharana. The sixth limb of Ashtanga Yoga is Dharana, or single-pointed concentration. So here we're beginning to move closer to what many people think of when they think of meditation. In Dharana, the practitioner attempts to direct and hold their concentration on a single point. This is an intermediary step which teaches the practitioner to hold their focus by using an object of focus. While it's not the full emptiness of the mind that's required for full meditation, it nevertheless begins to still the mind and reduce the chitta vritti, that's that word again, chitta vritti, the activities of the mind. This is the beginning of the overarching goal of yoga. There are various techniques of concentration which include holding the focus on a very specific part of the body, or the use of a candle flame, a mantra, a visualization, or the good old breath. The purpose of the chosen object is to serve as an anchor for the mind, preventing it from getting entangled in thoughts and distractions and whatever else. This is an essential preparatory step for the next limb of yoga, dhyana, which is meditation. The practitioner must observe and become aware of any fluctuations of the mind in dharana, and learn to redirect their focus back to the single point of concentration. This practice is subtle and challenging, and honestly, it can take years of diligent practice to attain.
Om bhurbhuvasvaha Om tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo.
7. Dhyana, or meditation. Dhyana removes the object of concentration as in dharana and replaces it with pure, uninterrupted awareness. Dhyana should be uninterrupted, steady, and empty. The contents of the mind should cease, and the practitioner should become wholly conscious. This is often where we encounter the concept of emptiness, which is a really important concept in Buddhist meditation. The Buddha and Patanjali may well have been contemporaries, and there's a pretty clear similarity here actually. Buddhism actually refers to dhyana as meditation, so they are the same concept, really. With practice, any sense of duality between the experience of the self or the I and the object of our awareness, even within our own mind, should diminish and the practitioner should become more unified. This is very challenging, and it might be said that honestly only a few ever truly master this state. But it is, however, this state of meditative union that paves the way for the final limb of yoga, known as samadhi. Samadhi. So what is samadhi? Samadhi is often translated as enlightenment or self-realization. I was taught self-realization, so I'm going to examine that for a moment. So what exactly is the self-realizing? In the previous limb, we mentioned union. I think that is a crucial concept here. One who has attained samadhi supposedly has a profound realization about the nature of their own consciousness and reality itself, which is they are one. They are the same thing. Patanjali describes samadhi as a state of complete oneness and integration where the meditator transcends the limitations of the individual ego and merges their pure consciousness, called the Atman, with the ultimate reality called Brahman. There is no longer any distinction between the observer and the observed. The meditator actually realizes that they are one with reality and that all is one. In the state of samadhi, the mind is entirely free from fluctuations, citta vritti, and is wholly absorbed in pure awareness. There are different stages or levels of samadhi, each leading to a deeper experience of the union between the self and reality. It's described as a state of bliss. This represents the pinnacle of the yogic journey and the ultimate goal of yoga practice. That's right. Yoga is ultimately about the realization that you are one with the universe. And this is considered a state of spiritual liberation. It's called moksha. I've been aware of this idea for nearly a decade now, and I've been captured by it ever since, honestly. In my understanding, the interconnectedness of existence is a fairly well-established and measurable idea within modern physics. I find the consistency of modern physics and samadhi really impressive, honestly. Samadhi is over 2,000 years old, and it was arrived at through pure consciousness and basically focused attention of the mind. It's important to note that samadhi is not easily attained. Patanjali informs us that samadhi is sequentially the final stage of yoga, and as such, mastery of all the preceding stages of yoga is mandatory. Nevertheless, the practice of yoga is ultimately about self-realization and union with ultimate reality, and I think that is pretty cool. My friends, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to get a hold of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, you can go to Amazon, where I produced an ebook of the Yoga Sutras. There's a full commentary by the preeminent Swami Vivekananda. The Yoga Sutras are short and very easy to digest, so I highly recommend you pick up a copy. If you'd like to see more videos of me talking about the great books of philosophy, please check out my playlist where I go into depths in all the great books of philosophy. Please like, subscribe, and have a wonderful day.